I paid for a romantic getaway to Hawaii, a last-ditch effort to reconnect with my husband, Mark. Instead, he gave my ticket to his inseparable best friend, Kevin, telling me to stay home and relax. Kevin would third-wheel our dates, mock me in front of Mark, and my husband would just laugh it off, gaslighting me into thinking I was the paranoid, jealous wife. This trip was the final straw. While they were gone, I didn't just get mad. I got a lawyer, a new apartment, and divorce papers ready for their return. But the real bombshell dropped when a mysterious message revealed what really happened in Hawaii. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a dark secret that blew their 20-year brotherhood to pieces and gave me the ultimate revenge. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, go ahead and give it a like. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks a bunch. There's a specific kind of suffocation that comes from being the third person in your own marriage. For 4 years I, a 31-year-old architect, had been living with that feeling. My husband, Mark, a 30-year-old graphic designer, wasn't having an affair with another woman. It was something far more insidious, more confusing. His other half was Kevin, his best friend since they were 10. Their bond wasn't just a friendship, it was a full-blown codependent entanglement that left no room for anyone else, especially me. They called each other brothers, but it felt more like they were two halves of the same dysfunctional whole. Mark was the quiet, agreeable, conflict-averse one. Kevin was his shadow self, loud, arrogant, and perpetually condescending. He had this way of looking at me, a smirk playing on his lips, as if I were a silly little girl playing dress-up in a grown-up's life. He'd invite himself over for dinner and dominate the conversation, telling inside jokes from their childhood that Mark would laugh at uproariously while I sat there, invisible. If I tried to join in, Kevin would cut me off or give me a blank stare, a silent dismissal that was louder than any insult. Early in our relationship, I tried to talk to Mark about it. It feels like Kevin doesn't respect me, or our relationship, I'd say, trying to keep my voice even. Mark would just sigh, a look of weary exasperation on his face. This was classic gaslighting. Babe, you're being overly sensitive. That's just Kevin. He's like that with everyone. You can't take it so personally. He's a guy, you're not his type to hang out with. It's not a threat. He made me feel crazy, irrational. He framed my valid feelings as jealousy, as if I were a nagging shrew trying to come between two brothers. He was exhibiting a profound case of learned helplessness within his own friendship, completely unable to establish boundaries or stand up for his own wife. So I stopped trying. I built a wall around my feelings, pretending it didn't bother me. I'd retreat to my home office or suddenly remember an errand I had to run whenever Kevin came over. I ceded the territory, hoping that marriage would solidify my position as the primary person in Mark's life. I was wrong. Marriage just gave Kevin a key to our front door. The breaking point came after Kevin's latest romantic flameout. He had been dating a woman named Sarah for about 6 months, the longest he'd ever managed. For a brief, blissful period, he was less of a presence in our lives. I was cautiously optimistic. Then, Sarah dumped him. Apparently, she got tired of competing with Mark for his attention. Kevin was devastated, and he landed on our couch in our Austin, Texas apartment like a shipwrecked sailor, expecting to be nursed back to health. For 2 weeks, our home became the Kevin convalescence ward. Mark catered to his every whim, bringing him beer, listening to him rant about Sarah for hours, and watching endless action movies. My own life, my own needs, were completely sidelined. I felt like a guest in my own home. I was drowning. That's when I had the idea, a grand gesture, a lifeline for a marriage that was taking on water. I used my own savings, a bonus I'd received from work, to book a 5-day, all-inclusive trip to a luxury resort in Kauai, Hawaii. I pictured us on the beach, reconnecting, remembering the people we were before Kevin's drama became the third person in our bed. I told Mark about the trip, presenting him with the printed itinerary. His eyes lit up. He was thrilled. "This is amazing, babe. You're the best. We so need this." For a few days, it was perfect. We were a team again, planning what we'd pack, looking up hiking trails online. The air in our apartment felt lighter. Then Kevin found out. He was over for dinner, still moping, when Mark let it slip. "Amy's taking me to Hawaii next week." Kevin's face fell. A dark, petulant cloud passed over his features. "A Hawaii? Wow, must be nice." While I'm here, going through the worst breakup of my life. He looked directly at Mark, his eyes radiating a potent mix of accusation and misery. I saw Mark's resolve crumble in real time. The guilt, a weapon Kevin had been sharpening for 20 years, hit its mark. I should have seen what was coming, but I was still naive enough to think our marriage vows meant something. The next evening Mark came to me, his expression a familiar cocktail of apology and helplessness. "Babe," he started, and I knew. He's in a really bad place. He thinks the guy's trip, some sun, would really help him get his head straight. I just stared at him, my heart turning to a block of ice. "What are you saying, Mark?" "He wants to go to Hawaii, with me," he finally mumbled, unable to meet my eyes. "He says I'm the only one who gets him right now. He needs his brother." I waited for the punchline. It didn't come. He was serious. "And what about me, Mark?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "The person who planned this trip, the person who paid for this trip, your wife?" "We can go anytime," he said, his voice pleading. "This is different. This is an emergency. He's my best friend. I can't let him down." And then came the line that shattered the last remaining shard of hope I had. Kevin suggested, "Maybe you could stay home. You've been working so hard you could have the apartment to yourself, just relax." Kevin suggested it. He had not only inserted himself into our romantic getaway, but he had also dictated my role in it, the accommodating wife who graciously steps aside. And my husband was his messenger boy. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Something inside me went very, very cold. "Okay," I said. Mark looked at me, stunned by my easy agreement. "Okay? Really? Oh babe, thank you. You're the most understanding wife ever. I'll pay you back for the ticket, I promise." "Don't worry about it," I said, turning away from him. "Just go. Have fun with your brother." He left the next morning. He tried to hug me goodbye, but I feigned a sudden coughing fit and waved him away. "Don't want you to get sick before your trip," I said, my voice flat. He bought it, or pretended to. He was too excited about his boy's trip to notice the Arctic chill that had descended upon our home. The moment the door closed behind him, the numbness receded, and a wave of pure, white-hot rage washed over me. This was it, the final betrayal. He hadn't just chosen his friend over me. He had completely invalidated my feelings, my contribution, my very presence in our marriage. The gaslighting had worked for years, making me feel insecure and paranoid. But this act was so blatant, so disrespectful, there was no way to twist it. It was the truth, stark and ugly. I did not spend the next 5 days moping. I spent them dismantling my life with the precision of a demolitions expert. My learned helplessness had been replaced by a furious, empowering clarity. Day 1, I called a top-rated divorce lawyer in Austin. I explained the situation. She didn't laugh. She said, "Good for you. Let's get you prepared." Day 2, I found a new apartment, a sleek one-bedroom in a different part of the city. I paid the deposit and first month's rent online. Day 3, I methodically went through our apartment. I packed my clothes, my books, my professional awards, every trace of my existence. I left all the furniture we had bought together. I left his things untouched. I even left the framed photos of us on the wall, a gallery of a life that was now officially a lie. Day 4, I hired movers. By the time the sun set, I was sitting on the floor of my new empty apartment, surrounded by boxes, eating takeout pizza from a cardboard box. I felt free. Day 5, the day they were due to fly back, I printed out the divorce papers. I drove to our old apartment one last time. I laid the papers on the kitchen counter, right where he would see them. On top of them, I placed my wedding ring. I didn't leave a note. The papers were the note. I went back to my new apartment, turned off my phone, and slept for 10 straight hours. The next morning I turned my phone back on. It was a war zone. Dozens of missed calls from Mark. A string of increasingly frantic texts. "Where are you? Where are all your things? This is a joke, right? This isn't funny, Amy. Pick up the phone. We need to talk about this. You're overreacting. Kevin thinks you've lost your mind. He says you were always too emotional." That last text was the one that made me laugh. Even now, in the wreckage of our marriage, he was still quoting Kevin, still seeing me through his friend's distorted lens. I blocked both their numbers. Any communication could now go through my lawyer. I thought that was the climax of the drama. I thought the slow, painful process of divorce was all that was left. I was wrong. The real plot twist was still to come. and it would arrive via an anonymous Instagram message a week later. The message was simple. "And you think you know what happened in Hawaii? You don't know the half of it. Ask your husband about the girl from the hotel bar. The one Kevin hooked him up with." The anonymous message landed on my phone like a small digital grenade. A girl from the hotel bar. It was such a cliché, yet it felt like a punch to the gut. The betrayal I was already reeling from was one of emotional neglect, of being deprioritized in favor of a toxic friendship. This was a different monster entirely. This was cheating, concrete, sordid, and undeniable. My first instinct was to dismiss it. A troll, maybe, a bitter ex of Kevin's, but a cold, creeping certainty told me it was true. It explained the finality in my decision to leave, a gut feeling that had been stronger than even the logical reasons. I had to know, but I wasn't going to get the truth from Mark. He would just lie, gaslight me further, and blame me for believing an anonymous message. I needed proof. I took a screenshot of the message and sent it to a tech-savvy friend of mine, asking if there was any way to trace the account. While she worked her magic, I did something my lawyer had advised against, but that my heart demanded. I unblocked Mark's number for a single, calculated purpose. I sent him the screenshot of the message with one simple question. Who is she? His response was almost instantaneous. He didn't call. He texted, a flurry of panicked digital backpedaling. "Amy, that's not what it looks like. It's a misunderstanding. Kevin was just trying to help me get my mind off our fight. It was his idea. It meant nothing. It was one night. It was a mistake. Please, we can fix this." He had confessed, in writing. The sheer stupidity of it was breathtaking. He had confirmed everything, and in the process, had done exactly what Kevin always did. Blamed Kevin. It was never his fault, always someone else's idea, someone else's influence. He was a 30-year-old man with the emotional accountability of a toddler. I screenshotted his entire confession, sent it to my lawyer with the subject line "ammunition," and then blocked his number again, this time for good. A few hours later, my tech-savvy friend texted me back. The anonymous account had been created that morning and deleted right after sending the message, but she'd managed to snag an IP address. It wasn't from a random troll. The IP address was registered to a coffee shop in a suburb of San Antonio, where, after a quick Google search, I found that Kevin's recent ex-girlfriend Sarah lived. It was Sarah, the woman who had dumped Kevin for being too obsessed with Mark. She had fired the torpedo that would sink their entire battleship. It was a beautiful, karmic act of revenge, and I silently thanked her from the bottom of my heart. She had no reason to help me, but she had seen the toxic dynamic and had chosen to light a match. Now, I had everything I needed. The story of their brotherhood vacation had a new, sleazy chapter. It wasn't just Mark choosing his friend over his wife. It was Kevin, the loyal brother, actively encouraging and facilitating his best friend's infidelity. This wasn't a friendship, it was a pact of mutual destruction. The first mediation session was scheduled for a month later. Mark, I learned through my lawyer, had moved in with Kevin. Of course he had. He had run straight from the arms of his wife into the arms of his other wife. He was contesting the divorce on the grounds that I had abandoned the marriage without cause, and was demanding half of my savings. The very savings I had used to pay for the ill-fated trip, as a settlement. The day of the mediation, I walked into the sterile conference room feeling a strange sense of calm. The rage had burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. Mark and Kevin were there, sitting next to their lawyer. They decided to present a united front, a decision they would soon regret. Kevin wasn't supposed to be there, but Mark, in a display of his spectacular lack of judgment, had brought him for moral support. He looked smug, ready to watch me get taken down a peg. My lawyer, a formidable woman named Brenda, started by laying out our initial position: a clean break, no alimony, and each party keeping their own assets. Mark's lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit, scoffed. My client's wife abandoned him, cleaned out their home, and has refused all attempts at reconciliation. Mr. Miller is the aggrieved party here. We find your offer insulting. Mark was nodding along, playing the part of the wounded husband. Kevin was smirking. Really, Brenda said, leaning forward. An aggrieved party. That's a bold position to take for a man who took a vacation to Hawaii, paid for by his wife, with his best friend, and then cheated on her. The color drained from Mark's face. The smirk vanished from Kevin's. That is an unsubstantiated and slanderous accusation. Their lawyer blustered. Is it? Brenda replied, her voice dangerously sweet. She slid a folder across the table. It contained printouts of the anonymous tip from Sarah, and, more importantly, Mark's panicked, texted confession. Your client, Brenda said, looking directly at the lawyer but speaking to Mark, was kind enough to confirm the slanderous accusation himself. In writing. Mark looked like he was going to vomit. Kevin stared at him, a look of pure, unadulterated fury on his face. This was the moment of the great unraveling. But Brenda wasn't done. She had saved the best for last. And then there's the matter of Mr. Davies, she said, gesturing towards Kevin. The moral support. It's interesting that he's here, because he's not just a witness to the infidelity. He was an active participant in procuring it. She slid another document across the table. It was a sworn affidavit. From the bartender at the hotel in Kauai. This was my lawyer's masterstroke. She had hired a private investigator who had flown to Kauai, found the bartender, and gotten her statement. The affidavit described in vivid detail how Kevin had been loudly bragging to her about how he needed to get his boy Mark laid to get his mind off his nagging wife. It detailed how Kevin had pointed out a woman at the bar, paid for her drinks, and orchestrated the entire encounter. It seems Mr. Davies' loyalty to his brother, Brenda said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, is rather selective. One might even call it a betrayal. And that was it, the explosion. Kevin shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He wasn't looking at me or the lawyers. He was looking at Mark, his face contorted with rage. And you told him I set it up? He screamed at Mark. You threw me under the bus to save your own skin? After everything? I panicked. Mark yelled back, his voice cracking. I was trying to help you. You're the one who's married. You're the one who went back to her room. Their lawyer was frantically trying to shut them up, but it was too late. The toxic, codependent bond that had defined their lives had finally ruptured, and they were tearing each other apart right there in the mediation room. All their years of secret resentments, of enabling each other's worst impulses, were spilling out in a torrent of ugly accusations. I just sat there watching the demolition. I felt nothing but a profound, cleansing sense of detachment. This was their mess. This was the inevitable conclusion of a relationship built on a foundation of mutual weakness and disrespect for everyone around them. Brenda stood up. I think we're done here for today, she said calmly. My client will be amending her petition to file for divorce on the grounds of adultery. Given the new evidence, we will also be seeking to have your client cover all of her legal fees. We'll be in touch. We walked out, leaving them in the ruins of their brotherhood, still screaming at each other. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Mark didn't fight it anymore. He agreed to all my terms. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he and Kevin were no longer speaking. Kevin had moved out, and Mark was living alone in their shared apartment, a place that was now, I imagine, haunted by the ghosts of 2 failed relationships. A few weeks after the divorce was final, I got a package in the mail. It was a beautiful handcrafted leather-bound journal. There was no return address, but inside the front cover was a simple handwritten note. But she sure would have tried, when trained. I'm sorry for my part in the chaos. S. Sarah. I smiled. I opened the journal to the first blank page. I had spent so many years of my life trying to write myself into someone else's story. Now, I finally had a book that was all my own. And I couldn't wait to see what I would write. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, go ahead and give it a like. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks a bunch.